Great, everybody. So now we're ready to present our second set of short snappers. And the first topic is critical thinking and reflection. And this will be presented by his name's Mike Allan. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He also happens to be our Alberta Family Physician of the Year, which I think deserves another round of applause. All right, there you go. So Mike is a good friend of ours, of course. He's also the Director of Programs and Practice Support with the CFPC.
Don't read all that.
Don't read all that, he says, but, we'll give you a couple highlights. He's modest, too.
My mom thinks I'm special.
Dr. Allan's mother thinks he's very special. He is a professor at the Department of Family Medicine at University of Alberta, so we think he's special at U of A. And he's practiced for over 20 years in family medicine, and so his patients think he's special, too. I'm going to introduce you to Mike.
Thank you. Okay. So I have to acknowledge right up front, so this is a talk that I'm doing for the College of Family Physicians of Canada. And so it might have a little bit of different meaning for the people who wrote it, critical thinking and reflection, than what you might think. But we'll get into that in a minute. I was going to title it, I'm from the college and I'm here to help, but I thought you'd all leave. So, okay. So, my presenter disclosure, and this time I would say the fact that I work for the College of Family Physicians of Canada actually matters, because that's why I'm here. And so there is bias in that, because I'm going to tell you about something they do that you should consider. So take that for what it's worth, okay? Because it is worth something. But, I've never taken, you guys know, I've never taken anything from industry, and nothing in the program that I'm going to talk about is sponsored by any commercial interests or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to try and describe to you today a tool that we have at the National College for you to report credits. So who is this really important for? So if you're the kind of person who is at a point in your reporting cycle where you need more credits and you don't have them, this is a very good mechanism to report those credits, to get extra credits. And if you're someone who's deeply passionate about learning and you're the kind of person who's going to jump into your kind of learning plan and all of that, it's also good for you. So I'm going to describe the purpose of the linking to learning exercises, recognize the variations in them, and describe a little bit how to submit. So the question that this wants to address is, do you have something that you do that may be unique to you or a little bit different? So maybe you're on a committee, maybe you're running your clinic and making plans of introducing the medical home, maybe you're running the clinic and trying to get your third next available down. It could be a whole bunch of things. Or you've taken additional training in an area and you're actually working under someone to enhance those skills. It could be a whole variety of things. It could be research. But if you are interested in translating that into credits, there are opportunities available. So it's a self-administered thing, and it sounds daunting. And I told the person when they said, Mike, could you present this in Alberta? I said, well, I have to be honest with you, I've made fun of it for 20 years. And she said, well, just give it a try. And so I did, and it's not nearly as daunting. So it turns out that I may have slightly over-exaggerated things for 20 years. So linking learning, it's a little bit about thinking critically about what's been going on. So if you're in a conference or you're in a meeting and you're participating in a meeting to decide how resources are delivered for your community, it's a chance for you to reflect on how will that affect your patients, how will it improve the outcomes for the community. So let's jump. There are 5 options for linking learning to practice. You can link it to practice. You can link it to some research you've done, and that may be a case study. It may be a peer review that you've done. You can link it to administration, so you're running your clinic or you're playing a role in AHS or with the college. You can link it to assessment. So that is actually looking at data. So you can actually reflect on your own data, or you're assessing someone else's work, which could even be in the research area. And then linking learning to teaching. So many of us, because by the way medicine promulgates itself and goes on, we're almost all teachers. So it's a great chance to reflect on even feedback you've gotten, or when you're seeing challenges in learning. Maybe your residents or med students always want to do something different than the way you would approach a problem. It's a chance for you to kind of reflect, has something changed? Okay, so which activities are eligible? Well, linking learning to practice. So there's a couple, they're going to give a couple examples, and I'm going to give you examples from my life. So volunteering in a resource-poor center, or volunteering or really learning anything about your practice that you didn't know before. Maybe your practice is changing. It started out when I took over my practice in Alberta, it was middle-aged females because I took over a female practice, and then it aged with me. And so I ended up having a very elderly practice for a while, and it was primarily women when I had come from the military. So obviously that's a big difference in the type of patients that I had. So I could have easily done one back then. So this example is you spend some time in the Philippines and you want to bring back and translate some of that into learning. This is for me. I did a dive medicine course with the Canadian Forces. And right around that time, Great Britain had run out of doctors to do diving medicine. So they were desperate, and when people are desperate, they turn to me. After all of those people, we chose you. So I went to Great Britain and for a month did call for hyperbaric injuries around, and at that time it included carbon monoxide poisoning and some other things, but for the entire country. And it was fascinating work. And it sounds awful because you're on call for pretty much a solid month, but it was still really great, and then I got some time off. And by the way, if I can go back, has anyone dove in a helmet before? Okay, so I have almost no idea about diving, but because I'm a dive doctor, I've got to do all this diving. So they dropped me in the bottom of lovely Halifax Harbor. And the way a helmet works is it's not sealed. It just fills up with air, and so you got to keep your head up. But you don't think about that. So in Halifax Harbor, you can't see anything. So I'm trying to walk around because you're walking on the bottom. So I look down, and my helmet entirely floods. And then you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm dying. Staying calm is probably the most important thing. You know, just like everything in medicine, first thing, stay calm. And so slowly, air comes back. Okay, dum-dum, never look down. Okay, so what other activities are eligible? Well, administration work. So maybe you're on a committee, maybe you're on a planning group, that kind of thing. So this is an example. You're working on the medical home in your clinic, and you want to translate that to learning. For me, these guys are my committee often, and we're expanding. And I want you to take careful note of the height in the usual suspects there. So ask Adrienne about being a hobbit. She loves that. So what activities are also eligible? Assessment. So this is where you're evaluating something else, like a clinical practice guideline, a manuscript, curriculum you're reviewing. And this can be your, when you're evaluating residents, that kind of thing. So. And it can also be things like your data that we're getting now for HQCA. But you guys know as Albertans, you might be getting SISIP data, which I was getting, HQCA data. You might have some work with the PLP, which is a good organization as far as they're not too pushy. They just, if you want to sign on for something, you do. If you don't, you don't. And then even my own practice had data. So I was getting inundated with data, some of which was really quite helpful. And I'll show you one of mine. This is my panel for A1C. And so what I noticed in my panel, if you look at age 65, how many patients at 65 and over have A1Cs less than 7, which is this, I almost said crazy target, is this target that we're supposed to hit. And so I noticed that mine were distinctly different from my colleagues. Now, how do we react when we notice we're different from our colleagues? Oh, crap. What am I doing wrong? And then I realized, oh, wait, I'm always telling people to back off A1C targets once patients get older. So I was actually practicing what I preach. So that was very reassuring for me. And looking over my data further, I could actually have done a really good linking learning exercise. What else is available? Well, research, obviously that plays a bit into my wheelhouse. So whatever kind of research you're working on, a poster, whatever. So let's say you were looking at a breast cancer screening program and you thought the recommendations, do they actually match with what I'm seeing in my patients? And am I following through on that kind of thing? So you might actually do a linking learning to that. And so this comes to me. That is a picture of me there. And what I noticed years ago, I was asked to talk on my history and research, and I was just about done the talk, and I said to our administrator, Sharon, at the time, I said, Sharon, I'm beginning to realize that my entire career is built on being pissed off. And she said to me, no, Mike, it's a thin line between pissed off and passionate. And I really love that line. So these are the things that ended up driving me to start to create simplified guidelines and focusing on primary care. So I did a linking learning on one of those, and I'll show it to you. And the last one is on our teaching, which is so fundamental to what we do. So let's say you conducted a 2-hour workshop and you got some feedback and you were reflecting on what feedback you got and how you could improve your teaching. You could do a linking to learning. So I thought I would pass on some feedback that I've gotten over the years, and all of this feedback is true. So one of the feedbacks, short. That was hurtful. And I thought, well, maybe they're talking about the duration of the lecture. And about 3 months later, I got this feedback. So then I was beginning to realize, So I changed the duration of my lecture, and those comments went away, which made me feel good. Otherwise, I'd have to go get lifts. And then the last one, this is my favorite feedback I've ever gotten. Dr. Allan is scary. And I'm not quite sure how to work on that. Okay, so where do you find these forms? Well, I'll show you. It's if you go to when you're logging in and reporting your credits and all of that, there is a button that you can easily pick in this area. So this is the classic. Once you've logged in, you'll see, and then there's enter a CPD activity. So if you hit that, that button, you'll be left with some options. If you pick self-learning, you'll see a bunch of options afterwards for linking learning. If you're specifically talking about assessment and data, there's a different button for that. And then there's a third one for looking at data. It's about practice quality improvement. I would encourage you not to use that. It's much more labor intensive for the same kind of turnout. So if you're thinking of reporting anything that's going on for you as linking learning to some of your activities, do it through linking learning. Don't do it through some of the other things we have there, because they're actually quite a bit harder for the same credits. Okay, so this is what mine looked like, and what I did was take the work I had done last year on cannabinoids and translated it to a linking to learning, and talked about, and you can see there's some aspects throughout there that I have to answer. But really what's amazing is this took me 25 minutes to do the whole thing, and it's the first time I've ever done it, and I got 5 credits, and the total cost to me was $0. Okay? So I think that's the sales of this, is that you can take what you're really learning and doing, so might frustrate you that you're attending something that isn't certified, but you can take that activity if you feel you've really learned something and turn it into something certified with about 20 minutes or 25 minutes of extra work. And it's not a little bit of credits, and it's no extra money. Okay, sorry, trying to move ahead here. There we go. Okay, so there's not much more to talk about. If you do have questions about it, I've got a big pile of handouts that you can use to even call a number if you want to get help with it. But it is a really simple tool, even though I did make fun of it for 20 years. It is a very simple tool to start to reflect on what we're doing and getting credits for those. Thank you very much.